All right, President Biden making his final pitch to voters election eve. Conventional wisdom says we might not know control of the Senate until the end of the week. President Biden says Democrats are going to pick up at least one seat. Obviously, big questions on that. Of course, depends on just how big the red wave is, or is it a ripple, or is it just a puddle? Scott Tranter here, head of Decision Desk HQ, our election partners. He and his team are going to call the races tomorrow. We want to put this up. Senate control model, GOP 57%, Dems 43% that you guys have. What's curious to me about this is how it has shifted almost 20 points since August. How much of that has to do with we've gone from talking about abortion and crime to talking abortion and threats to democracy to talking about crime in the economy?
It's almost all about crime in the economy. And that's what News Nation's been tracking the entire year. Every month we do a issues poll for you guys, and it's always crime, it's always inflation. And guess what? That's what it is this month, and we're one day away from the election, and that's what people are voting on.
Yeah, it was 66% chance of Democratic control back in August. Wisconsin chances of winning Senator Ron Johnson, 91%, Mandela Barnes, 9%. I asked Chris Starrett from the beginning, how would conventional wisdom be wrong if this was a red puddle with a little bit of a blue ripple?
Well, we'd probably see Ron Johnson lose in Wisconsin. Wisconsin was.
What would we have missed?
Oh, what we've missed? We probably would have missed a suburban vote outside of Milwaukee. We would have missed the African-American vote in some of the urban areas, and we would have missed the Hispanic vote that has been inching towards the Republicans the last few months.
And we probably also would have been missing suburban women. Yep. I think about if we look in at the presidential race, go to Wisconsin, zoom in. This was a state in 2020, obviously, that went for Joe Biden. 2016, it went for Donald Trump. There was this shift there.
Yep. Yeah, big shift. I mean, Wisconsin's been a battleground state going back to the 2008 election, and it's back and forth. Ron Johnson running for re-election, relatively unpopular, given he's an incumbent senator. By relative, meaning his approval rating is slightly underwater.
When we look at 91.9 Ron Johnson, the flip of that is Patty Murray in Washington State, 92% Democratic incumbent Tiffany Smiley, 8%. If there is a real red wave, though, does that percentage change? If all of a sudden we see, say, Virginia 2 or Virginia 10 all the way over here, if we zoom in here.
Virginia 10's a great one.
Virginia 10, that's Loudoun County, so that's suburban D.C., one of the wealthiest districts in the country. If Hung Cao is topping Jennifer Wexton in a Biden plus 19 state, does that change the chances all the way out in Washington State?
Yeah, that's an interesting one, because right now we have Hung Cao at about a 10% chance of winning. So if he pulls it off, which we'll know earlier in the night, then we have a little bit of foreshadowing for what Washington will tell us as it counts later in the night, which is also a 10% chance of winning for the Republican.
All right, there we go. So this we get early. This we get 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night as it tends that Virginia has their act together when it comes to counting. This is a sort of an old school thing to talk about, but put up the weather map for tomorrow in terms of turnout. One of the things you track at DDHQ so well is the early vote, the absentee vote, and the like. Does that mean the weather for tomorrow matters more, less, not as much?
Weather always matters, because that affects whether people want to go to the polls at 8 in the morning, if it's raining or if it's cold. What's interesting, though, is there's a lot more early vote and absentee voting in places like Florida. 60–70% of the people have already voted, so the weather won't matter to them.
All right, so when we looked at the weather map, it's sunny basically across the country. So sort of the idea that it helps Democrats versus not is
not
a little bit up. We wanted to talk real quick about Nevada and Arizona. We look at the presidential numbers out in, say, Nevada. That obviously went for Joe Biden. It was relatively close. Arizona, we know how that went for Joe Biden as well, but by just a sliver of a margin. Nevada is one of these states we're looking at this ticket splitting idea, right? Somebody's going to vote perhaps for the Republican for governor for Kari Lake, but Mark Kelly, the Democrat, for Senate. How much harder does that make your job throughout the night?
Very hard, because ticket splitting, it's something we talk about in academia, but it's not something we often see. And so if we see it in a place like Arizona or a place like Georgia, the other possible place, it would be a phenomenon, not a normal thing.
Yeah, well, the polling certainly supports it right now. Arizona, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Ohio as well. Yep. We'll be watching it for it. Scott, thank you very much. We appreciate it.